In the great optimism of the 1990s, it seemed like we had reached the final and optimal form of our existence. The world became a globalized community with prosperity and a chance to end wars and famine and connect us through technology. Well, 30 years later, I think we could call 2020 another turning point in history. Previously in 2020.
At this point, several crises might emerge that would not only turn the election, but potentially bring about a wider global conflict.
Trump condemns China for its initial response, delays that allowed the virus to spread.
They're so frightening, they're mentioned in the scriptures as divine punishment.
Asian giant hornets, nicknamed
Murder Hornet.
Murder Hornet.
Murder Hornet. Murder Hornets.
You always have the possibility that you might have another swine flu type outbreak as we had in 2009.
No doubt, 2020 is a historical year. Historical trends tend to work like stocks. A big impulse can turn the market upside down. In 1989, the fall of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War brought upon one of the most promising and optimistic decades. But then, in 2001, it all came crashing down. Since then, like a downward spiral, our bull market turned into a bear market, and our optimism turned into fear and xenophobia, and our stock has been going down, literally and figuratively. Now all the negative trends of the past 2 decades culminate as COVID-19 brings another shock to our system. Is it all bad? What's happening in 2020? Let's dive in. As a society, we may never go back to normal. Social distancing is here to stay, and while wearing masks was a weird sight for Westerners entering Japan, it's now the mainstream everywhere. Alright, maybe except in Florida.
Bro, you gotta wear a mask, bro. Everybody got on masks, man. Everybody got on masks, man.
We will not be sure for a long time how this year and this pandemic will change our societies, but it can go either one of 2 ways. First, as we get even more separated from each other, we could get more divided as well. COVID-19 is a somewhat similar shock as 9/11 was. It breeds fear, and we are willing to give up a lot of our privacy to keep us and our communities safe. Don't get me wrong, it is an absolute necessity in order to flatten the curve and save lives, but the way the Patriot Act brought closer Orwell's nightmare, contact tracing could be a powerful tool in the hands of authoritarian governments. During the first wave, all over the world, autocratic systems managed to leverage our fear, and in return, they have seen their approval ratings skyrocketing. At the same time, they invisibly extended their power and came up with new methods of surveillance in the name of this medical emergency.
No personal information is collected or retained. Your geolocation data, not collected or retained. It's totally privacy protective, and this is critical.
For more on this, we're joined by Richard Lachman from Ryerson University.
So there's some really amazing ideas that I think any of us would be happy to hear. If we think our phones might help us get outside our houses and start the economy and start our lives back up again, that sounds on the surface really wonderful. There are a lot of problems with the idea, however.
Even though power through fear is like dictatorship 101, there were 2 questionable leaders who were narcissistic enough that they rather put their heads in the sand and hope for the best.
Typically that will go away in April. It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. It'll go away. It will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. We need a little separation until such time as this goes away. It's going to go away.
Well, Brazil and the US are now leading the world in daily new cases and death numbers, while their economy is being decimated, and they will probably not be able to breathe a sigh of relief before a second wave and a seasonal flu strike. If the trauma of this year doesn't change things fundamentally, we will see their examples not as outliers, but as the normal. If we don't start listen to science and scientists, if we don't engage in our political systems and keep electing babbling fools, then the American and Brazil response could foreshadow how we will manage future crises. Let's not forget what futurists have been saying all year. This pandemic is just the appetizer to the main course, that is, climate change. As the second wave of this pandemic is imminent, We have to prepare for scenarios like what happened in northern Italy during the first wave. In Lodi, hospitals got overburdened and doctors had to decide who lives and who dies. But that's the doom and gloom scenario, where the pandemic just fastens up existing negative trends and pushes us further down. In the more optimistic scenario, this could all be a game-changer year for us. The pandemic shines a light on the fundamentally broken healthcare systems around the world, and in the past few months it became clear, not just to voters, but politicians as well, that a well-oiled, well-financed healthcare system should be a primary investment. We can still see division as to how politicians approach the subject, but now we can finally sense a sort of tectonic shift in how we think about healthcare that could lead to the reform we have been longing for decades. This could also mean a faster than expected adoption of digital health. Shifting the point of care from the hospitals to the patients is not just about comfort anymore, it's a necessity. Telemedicine will make consultations safer and faster, while at-home lab tests and portable diagnostic devices will expand how much information can be gathered wherever the patient is. The adoption of AI systems will contribute to how accurately we diagnose and how successfully we treat patients, will change medicine as we know it. Not to mention its significant forecasting power, as it was an AI system that predicted the COVID-19 pandemic well before WHO did. If only we had acted faster based on it, it could have been just a small and isolated outbreak. In terms of politics, we are getting a clear picture of crisis management in action. This is not a time of empty promises. We've seen that the real leadership lies in the hands of the likes of Jacinda Ardern, Angela Merkel or Mette Frederiksen, while narcissist autocrats have driven their countries off the cliff. And if we are finally going to listen to science and scientists, we might be able to turn the wheels of history. Because when climate change hits, the quarantine won't be temporary. Entire regions will be uninhabitable, summers might be too hot for humans, and air pollution will be so bad that we are going to look back fondly when we only needed a simple surgical mask when we went out to the grocery store. So, what is 2020 about? There are basically three scenarios I can imagine. The first option is someone playing Jumanji, where we move from level to level and it gets more horrifying each time. Whoever that person is, they need to finish the game, like right now, please. The second scenario is that we are living in the dystopia that science fiction books and movies have been warning us about for decades, where our privacy is in jeopardy, where our lives depend on technologies, and where we have to wear masks and can meet and hug each other. Where issues such as racial disparities and financial inequalities, crumbling healthcare systems, and the fear of losing privacy in the technological era will stay with us forever. Or, hopefully, we are in the third scenario where we live through a historical challenge, where after decades of prosperity and blissful ignorance, we have to face and tackle these issues that we've put under the rug for way too long. I really do hope we are going to turn a page on these past decades, and as we move out of this pandemic, we will get a renewed, clear focus on what's important, and we can successfully tackle the crises that lie ahead. Until now, we were writing science fiction. Now, it's all about a documentary, and it's up to us how we shape the narrative. Stay safe. If you like this video and want to hear more about the future of this pandemic, please subscribe below.